In this panel, I just wanted to pass really quickly to interpreters since we're gonna be having interpretation for this session. And I will pass the mic to whoever is gonna be doing the instructions for interpretation.
That's me, Ana Martina, thank you.
Okay.
If you could advance the slides, just so we could. We are going to be having interpretation during this session. And you can access interpretation on your desktop by clicking on the globe in your toolbar at the bottom of your screen. If you are, when you do click there, you will be able to see two languages, English or Spanish, and then you'll want to choose the language of your choice. Advance the slide, please. If you're using your mobile device, you can also access interpretation by clicking on the three dots and then choosing language interpretation, and again, choosing your language of choice.
Entonces vamos a estar proveyendo interpretación en esta sesión. Si están usando la computadora, Ana Martina, ¿puedes regresar a la pantalla anterior un segundo? Pueden hacer clic en el globo y seguir los tres pasos que están ahí. Básicamente haciendo clic al globo, escogiendo el idioma que desean escuchar y les indicamos mejor no hacer clic en Mute Original Audio. Entonces sí, y avanza por favor. La siguiente, y si se conectan por su teléfono inteligente, es un poquito diferente. Haga clic en los tres puntitos que aparecen en la parte inferior derecha. Ahí puede elegir Language Interpretation y luego escoge el idioma que quiere escuchar. Y después de hacer eso, tiene que hacer clic en donde dice Done para poder escoger el idioma.
And if you can actually go forward one more. If you are having, if you are not bilingual, you'll definitely want to go into one of those channels.
Y si usted no es bilingüe, quiere escoger uno de esos dos canales de inglés o español.
If you're having any trouble using Zoom or the interpretation function, you can chat tech and language support. That's me, my name, just in the chat function. And if you have any questions about the session for the presenter, you can contact our moderator. I will also include these instructions in the chat.
También si tienen problemas usando el Zoom, pueden enviar un chat privado a Julián, que está con el título de Tech y Language Support. Si tienen cualquier problema en cuanto alguna pregunta en cuanto al contenido del programa en sí, pueden enviarle un mensaje a la persona que dice moderator. Y estas instrucciones van a estar también en el chat.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you so much for the introduction so that we can all be connected and access language justice. So I will introduce quickly myself. My name is Ana Martina. I'm the membership director of the U.S. Federation of Worker Cooperatives. And it's a pleasure to be here with you all. We're gonna have a conversation today about the centering the workers. They are sustaining us. And so for that, we're gonna have Daniela Preisler as our facilitator. Daniela Preisler is one of a large board directors of the U.S. Federation of Worker Cooperatives. She's also a founder of the Colmenar Cooperative Consulting in the Bay Area. And she's gonna be helping us today on our conversation and moving us along in this conversation. She's also a former worker owner of Home Green Home in the Bay Area. And we're gonna have today also with us, Adria Powell, who is the president of Cooperative Home Care Associates. Adria is also sitting in the board of the Democracy at Work Institute. And Adria is just, you know, a person that is like working in 3 divisions in operations, clinical services, and finances. She works closely with all these teams to ensure the organization maintains the best quality of services possible. And when we're inviting Adria also in this panel, because Cooperative Home Care Associates is one of the cooperatives, the largest worker cooperative of workers in this country. Cooperative Home Care Associates was founded in 1985 to provide quality home care to clients by providing quality jobs for direct care workers. And they started with 12 home health aides, and the cooperative right now employs more than 2,000 staff. Together with the nonprofit that they found in 1992, Cooperative Home Care maintains an employer-based workforce development program that provides free training for over 600 low-income and unemployed women annually and serves as a significant driver of employment in the Bronx in New York City. So we're gonna have Adria, and I'm gonna pass the mics in a second. I'm just gonna introduce our other speaker today, Susan Kapchak, who oversees the management of child space centers and is the company's main contact with agencies and grant-making organizations. She has held many positions within child space since joining as an assistant classroom teacher in 1988. These include head teacher, staffing coordinator, financial and operations director. She provides business technical assistance and peer mentoring to childcare programs looking to strengthen their business practices to financially support increased quality standards. We also invited Child Space today to this conversation because Child Space is also one of those worker cooperatives that was founded also in the 80s. In 1988, when it was established in their first center in Mount Airy in Philadelphia. So we are bringing this, one of the oldest worker cooperatives in the country. They're also hiring their majority women. And we are bringing this conversation today also to center what it means to be an essential worker. And we put together this session framing our conversation in this report that was put together by the Hawaii State Commission on the Status of Women as a response to creating solutions during this crisis that we're living right now with COVID-19. So this report that is actually is a proposal on how to move us forward in the building this new economy and not just the reconstruction of the old economy, the old systems of oppression that we've been living. This report, it's called Building Bridges, No Walking on Backs. And it's a plan based on a feminist economy for the recovery. So we want to bring this conversation today because as we are recognizing essential workers, we're not yet recognizing really the true value of what primary workers are giving us in the industry of care for children, of care for older people or people with special needs. And we think it is important to bring these voices to really listen and to really understand what we need to do, what it will take for us to build a new economy that is really attending to these needs. So I'm gonna pass the mic to Daniela so that she can lead us into this conversation.
Muchas gracias, Ana. Muchas gracias y bienvenides a todas.
Thank you, everybody, and welcome everybody this afternoon, especially Adria and Susan. It is a pleasure to share this space with you. Thank you, Ana, for the introduction to this important topic. Today, essential workers have not been valued as they deserve. I would like to start the conversation with a question. I would like to know what path you took to becoming essential workers in your respective co-ops and what position you have now at present in your respective co-ops. And Adria, you can start.
Thank you, Danny. First, let me say I want to thank the Federation and Dowie for inviting me to be part of this panel. And I'm really excited for the conversation that we're going to have. And I'm super excited to be joining Susan. I got my start at Cooperative Home Care actually in 1988. So to hear that Susan started at Child Space in '88, and I know the organization well, as one of the founders was a woman who supported Cooperative Home Care early on, and we're still connected to her, Cindy Coker. So my path to Cooperative Home Care Associates, what we affectionately call CHCA, and some people think—
Adria, I'm sorry, I'm just going to interrupt you here 1 second. Your volume is a little bit low, so if you can speak a little bit closer to your microphone, please.
Okay, can you hear me better now? No? Wow, okay. Louder? Oh my God, I'm gonna be screaming. Let me see if I put on headphones, if that's gonna work better. I don't know what's going on here.
Thank you so much, Adria, and thank you for everybody for your patience. Just because we are doing the interpretation, we just want to make sure that the interpreters are accessing the audio.
Can you hear me now, or it's still low?
It's a little bit low, but.
All right, let me see. Better now or no?
Sí.
Better? Okay, great.
Excellent.
Okay, so my path to Cooperative Home Care Associates, which we call CHCA, and sometimes people misunderstand and think it's Chica, which is kind of cool. Actually took, it was a familial connection. I think some people know, but if they don't, my mother was one of the original founders and formers of Cooperative Home Care back in 1985. And just to be clear, I'm actually not a direct care worker, though our cooperative provides direct care services and the essential home care services that are required for adults living with disabilities or with chronic conditions and people who are aging to remain in their homes and their communities safely. In addition to Cooperative Home Care providing direct care services, CHCA has a robust and comprehensive workforce development program. CHCA trains, as Anna had alluded to, more than 600 low-income women, predominantly immigrant women, women of color, to be placed into home care, these essential home care jobs that are so desperately needed. Throughout my years at CHCA, I have fulfilled a variety of roles and have been basically touched every aspect of the organization, and am really proud and honored to lead this organization, which is an incredibly innovative and amazing organization that has been around since 1985.
Así es, Adria, una increíble cooperativa. Muchas gracias. Susan, si
What a
pudieras tú.
great cooperative. Thank you. Susan, this is the same question. Would you like me to restate it? Susan? Are you?
You're on mute, Susan.
You're muted, Susan. Can you unmute? Thanks. Susan, you need to unmute? Okay.
It won't let me unmute. You have to do it.
No, you're unmuted now, but you're low too.
Okay. Nope. Okay, unmute. Can you hear me now?
Sí, te escuchamos.
Okay.
Hay un poquito de eco. Pero...
So I have, okay, if you can state that again.
Sí, la pregunta dice, ¿cuál fue el camino que te llevó a ser parte?
So what was the path that brought you to working at and taking part in this organization of essential workers, and what is the role that you play and present in this organization?
Okay, so like many child care providers that come into the field, Child Space is a direct care child worker co-op center that services children from ages 4 months to 5th grade. So what we provide is full day care services and after school services, as well as summer camp services. I started at ChildSpace like many professionals that go into the field because I needed care for my child. So it was one of those things where I had my child at school and I had some income coming in. So it was a win-win for me. I initially thought I was just going to be there for 2 years. And now it's 32 years later. And what kept me there was really the worker co-op structure. I've always worked in participatory management businesses, but this was a little bit different. So when we first started, we only had one program, one center. Now we have 3 childcare, well, I'm sorry, we have 2, we had 3, we just closed one. But for me, it was important to be able to do the advocacy piece. So it wasn't just about doing the childcare piece, it was about the fact that childcare workers are not valued. So for us, it was really important to be able to develop an advocacy arm of our organization and to advocate for the workforce. And that's really what has kept me here at ChildSpace.
Muchas gracias, Susan.
Thank you, Susan. So it's been, all the conversations we've had have been so intense. And just to repeat, this is a very important conversation. In this moment, we're in a pandemic, we're living in this crisis, but we're going to be facing an economic crisis that's already coming. So our positioning at the global level is so important. And so I would like to, in terms of looking at this issue, what were the challenges, the most immediate challenges that you had to face in your own cooperatives when the pandemic started or when the pandemic began?
Well, I mean, I can go if that's okay. So for ChildSpace, we really had no time to plan. You know, we got a call on Sunday that the governor shut us down, and we notified all our parents, and that Monday we were closed. We initially thought we were going to be closed for a month, so we had enough reserves to be able to pay our staff for that month. It wound up going into like 11 weeks. And we, at that point, were doing a lot of fundraising. And luckily for Pennsylvania childcare, it was really one of those things that they knew that they had to lift them up to financially stabilize them, or they would all go out of business, especially if you were dealing with subsidized children and your money was coming from the subsidies. So for us, the immediate thing we had to do was, how are we going to fundraise to keep our employees paid? And mainly because at that point, the unemployment processing was like 7 to 8 weeks, and our employees work paycheck to paycheck, and they weren't able to wait 8 weeks. So for us, it was really important for us to fundraise to get them to have continuous paychecks throughout this whole thing. So we were able to fundraise through grants. And those were some of the local grants through the William Penn Foundation and other foundations that were supporting Philadelphia childcare businesses. And then we were one of the first ones that were granted in Philadelphia the PPP money, which was really important because we had that to cover an additional 8 weeks of employees' wages. However, we still lost $300,000. So, you know, for us, it's going to take us probably 10 years to dig out of that hole. You know, and right now what we're trying to do is fundraise additional money, capital, to be able to get through this next year, because as like everyone knows, nobody wants to bring their kids to childcare because they're concerned. So our enrollment has dropped about 50%. So it's a long recovery.
Muchas gracias, Susan. Sí, viviendo tiempos bien difíciles. Adria, en el caso de...
Thank you. So, Edja, in the case of your cooperative?
Yes, faced similar things that Susan has raised, with the caveat that home care workers are essential workers and they have to continue to provide services in the community. So even as we were getting word, you know, the buzz started to really pick up in the beginning of March. And similar to Philadelphia, the New York State governor and the New York City mayor virtually said overnight that schools were going to be closed. And so many of our home care workers have school-age children. And I think it just sent people into a panic. That very first week where the schools were closed, we saw a significant drop in hours. But then it felt like things started to settle in initially after that first week. But what ended up happening on the heels of that was that clients began to get fearful of having workers come into their homes. And so they were requesting no services. We had the fact that New York State was on pause. And so many family members were back at home with the clients that we were serving. And so the family members were worried about receiving services. Our home care workers were concerned. Many are in are in a high risk population. We know that disproportionately this pandemic is impacting Black and Brown people and the people who, are earning lower wages and have already had systemic challenges in terms of being able to survive this kind of a pandemic. So we had workers who were testing positive and had to be quarantined, or were exposed to someone who had tested positive and needed to be quarantined. So we had, early on, incredible loss of hours, which translates into revenue. Meanwhile, facing a huge crisis around receiving the personal protective equipment that's needed to protect the home care workers and the clients when delivering, closely held services. I mean, it's like you are literally having to help someone bathe, or if someone is in respiratory distress, you could be literally inches away from them. And so being able to secure the proper PPE, getting new PPE that we had never used in the past, experiencing shortages in the PPE, experiencing price gouging that I'm sure anyone who has to get PPE knows. Thankfully, early on, we were able to work with another cooperative, Opportunity Threads, through the Industrial Commons in the Carolina Textile District. And they were making gowns, and they were making face masks of all different kinds. There were other cooperatives that were manufacturing face shields. And so we were able to get right out the gate PPE to safeguard our workforce. But the amounts that we needed were huge. And so in the past, when we have been able to provide our workforce with a nice supply so that they're not, having to come to the office to get the equipment all the time, we weren't able to do that. And what it meant was that workers had they had to go out more frequently to come to the organization in order to pick up the PPE. And that was hugely problematic, because, it just increases the chances that something could happen. Many of our workers travel on public transportation. There were challenges with public transportation. We also, in New York State, which was really exceptional for the workers, the state implemented a 14-day paid sick leave for anyone who tested positive or was in mandatory isolation or quarantine. However, the state implemented that requirement without any sort of funding behind it. And so it falls to the organization, it falls to the cooperative to pay that, when we already are operating on
pre-pandemic, the slimmest of margins, and in the pandemic, reduced revenue, loss of, hours, increased expenses all over the place. We also faced challenges because we had to do some infrastructure around technology so that we could screen workers before they went into the client's homes, which was another requirement that came down. We had to stop our training program, and our training program generates revenue for us. And it also provides new workers who can go into the homes of the clients who need these services, the most. So right out the gate, I mean, we were hit with tremendous challenges around this pandemic. And I mean, we're slowly getting to a place of feeling like a little bit on solid footing in terms of building back some hours. But similar to what Susan said, it's going to take time to really build back.
Can I just also add something? Is that childcare programs were not considered essential workers. So I'm just trying to, we weren't considered essential workers. So what happened is that for us to be able to stay in business or go, take the children, we were required to get a waiver. And they were not giving waivers out unless you were providing care.
Susan, I think we're having some feedback.
Okay. Let me just see what they're. Okay, hold on.
I'm just.
Susan, I just muted you.
Is that better? Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you. Can you repeat that again? So there was an echo all the time. Yeah,
Okay.
Sorry about that.
I think I'm better now. Okay.
Okay.
So we were unable to, even if we wanted to continue business, we couldn't because they did not consider childcare workers essential. Mm-hmm. And I think that was the real key to us saying, this is a perfect advocacy point right now, is that because they pushed us in the phase 1 to open up, even though we had very little PPE, we were able, gouging was a big issue. So for us, we really needed to figure out how do we go back to the state and say, we are essential workers. We need to get some additional resources in here so that we can actually continue to pay our employees. But they still to this day do not consider us essential workers, but families can't go to work without childcare. Mm-hmm. So that's what we're struggling with right now, is that we consider them essential workers. They consider themselves essential workers, but the general public and more important, the legislators don't consider them essential workers.
And I'll just piggyback on that, in that this was actually the first time that New York State recognized home care workers as essential workers. Prior to this, when we've had blackouts, when we've had snowstorms, today is 9/11, and 19 years ago, when workers had to still get to clients who were in the areas that were shut down, there are stories of agencies that had to go to the police department and give a list of workers who needed to be able to cross lines because home care workers were not seen as essential.
Yeah.
Es increíble, yo creo que todas las personas que han tenido que ajustarse a trabajar en
It's incredible. All the people who have learned to work online have learned about how important it is. Something that's not been valued for women in this work, in this reproductive work, where it hasn't had the real value, which sustains this economic system, because without this care, we would not be able to, people would not be able to go to work. And we are now seeing this permanently, being there with the children and having to coordinate many things at the same time, and to be able to see the importance it has. And you were commenting about, in the case of both cooperatives, most of them are women, women of color, immigrant women are the employees of these cooperatives. I would like to know, what does it mean in your words, be an essential worker, and what are the needs that you have and the improvements, the necessary improvements, so that it be recognized the value that this essential work has. You can go, Susan
or
Adria,
Adria?
Yeah. So for me, what it means to be an essential worker and what our home care workers do is provide a service that sustains people, right? It is not the kind of custodial care or domestic work. It is not work that should be devalued because it is life-sustaining work. I think for me, the single largest shift that I would want to see is that this society recognizes the importance of the work that is being done by these essential workers. It's, you know, for us, it's home care work. So by design, it's invisible and unseen because you're going into someone's home to provide those services. And it's not until somebody needs the services or their family members needs the services, they have that sort of epiphany and understand the value and the need there. You know, it's largely, because we talk about this, it's largely performed by women. So it's seen as women's work, and women's work is less valued. And, you know, there's all sorts of historical context there. And the people of color, there's all sorts of historical context there who provide this work. You know, once we are actually seen, then people will understand the work that caregivers is really vital. It's, for us in home care, it's about maintaining people's safety and comfort in their own homes and their own communities. Our home care workers keep people out of hospitals. Hospitals cost a tremendous amount of money. And during this pandemic, hospitalizations and ER visits were literally life and death matters for our clients. If our clients went into the emergency rooms or the hospitals, they had higher chances of not ever coming out. So for, you know, that to me is the crux of an essential service. You're protecting people's lives and keeping them in their home and providing the services that they need to be able to stay in those homes. Just looking at my notes, I don't want to forget anything. You know, in addition to the piece around the hospitalizations, what we've also seen is that larger numbers of people are passing away from COVID in congregate settings, like nursing homes. And so again, here's the opportunity for the home care workforce to keep people at home and protect them against this pandemic, and provide the services that they need so that they can be safe. So and for me, it's like, at this point, this is the moment we need to really leverage and raise awareness and, you know, have people really have home care worker visibility increased so that as a society, we understand the need for this work and value it and pay for it in a way that workers can earn life-sustaining wages and take care of themselves, their families, and continue to provide the services that they do.
Y se me viene ahora a la mente, tú mencionaste que ustedes
So it
entrenan.
occurs to me that you are training a whole lot of low-income women every year. How does the co-op take responsibility for, or take charge of these women that you're working with? What do you do with them, and how do you help them? Compared to a regular business, for example. What's the difference in what you're doing with the women than what a regular business might do, the women you're training?
So as I said in the beginning, we have a super robust and comprehensive training program that exceeds what's required, because we believe that you've got to invest in this workforce. It's a workforce that needs skills to be able to manage the challenges. It is not custodial care. It's not, babysitting somebody. So the training that we provide for them as home care workers really includes, not only the hard skills of like taking care, checking blood pressure, reporting changes in client's condition, but also communication skills, skills around cultural sensitivity, ways to be able to effectively manage conflict. We do specialized training around serving adults with disabilities, because that has been a cohort of the population that has been largely ignored. And so, we really have worked to specialize in that with the support of an organization that we work with, Independence Care System. And then as people transition into work, we continue to have supportive services. And even when they're in the training program, there's a set of wraparound services that our case managers deliver. We look largely to promote from within the organization, so that women who are coming into the cooperative see examples of other women who have been able to make this a career. As a cooperative, folks know, the workers are involved in the governance of the organization and decision making in different aspects. And then, we work to really promote what the value of this job and stand behind that in terms of the way that we run the training program, the way that we run our organization. We had to actually suspend our training program at the beginning of COVID, but also recognize that there was a need for people to get jobs during this time. And so we started to go through lists of folks who had formerly been trained by Cooperative or had been referred to us by 1199 SEIU, which is the union that organizes our home care workers. And we were actually able to pretty early on, I would say in April, begin training, like 2-day training. There's a 2-day training program for somebody who's already been a home care worker. And so we were able to start off with that and make sure that we felt comfortable with the social distancing, and when people had to practice demonstrations where they were going to be in close contact, like when they were practicing a bed bath or any kind of grooming, they would be in the actual PPE that they were going to be working in the field. And then within another month, we were able to actually open up our full entry-level training program again, while many other organizations are looking for ways to do that kind of training remotely. And we understand why, but for a job where you are going to be doing direct care, you have got to have some level of direct care training, in-person training, in order to model what's going to be happening when you're with that client in the home.
Really, thank you so much. I know that I went further in our conversation, but it was...
Gotta go to Susan.
Muchas gracias. Susan.
Thank you so much, Susan.
Yes. So for me to be an essential worker, yes, we're teaching the children their colors and their letters and, all different kinds of senses. But for me, it really is important for us that we are molding a human being. So for us, the importance is really teaching them diversity, kindness, compassion, being stewards of the earth, but more important, honesty, which is what we're struggling in this country with right now. So for us, when we set them out into, the world, they understand teamwork, and they understand that it's not just about them and their family, that it's for the greater good. And that, to me, even though we're not listed as essential workers, that to me shows you how essential we are. Parents rely on us to teach their children a wide variety of things. So for me, as an essential worker, I came here from a business background. So I also came from not understanding the level of low pay that brought with this industry. So that was a shock to me. So we have to, a way to, the necessary improvements for me is that not only recognize that it's essential workers, that they should be paid a living wage, and that the state really has to invest, because we're, as a high quality program, we get paid about 60% of what our fees are that the state reimburses. And we don't charge our families the difference, mainly because they can't afford it. So every time we take a subsidized child, we take a 40% hit to our income. And what we want is the state to understand that for high quality, which teaches all of these things, not only the colors, but all these other human traits that they should be showing anyway, that they should be reimbursing us what our costs are. And for that, they have to do an additional investment. And it's just not valued. It's a women's work. And it's, like you said, a high level of women of color, a lot of low-income women we have working, and they're just not valued. And that's why it's so important for our advocacy arm to really be out there bringing their voices to the table. So what I think, as far as what we need to do for low-income women, is we, like Cooperative Home Care, we have a training program. Our state has understood that there is such a low staff and staffing, actually it's a staffing crisis that we're dealing with. So they have had a lot of investment into higher education and credentialing. And that's at no cost to our teachers. So when they come to us, that is a requirement of the hiring process, is that they have to commit to increasing their credentialing or increasing their higher education. And because the state invests, it's no cost to the employees to get an associate's degree or a BA degree. And a lot of that is, we understand that they're also, most of them are mothers. So we are in this program where they can actually do the classes and are released from their job to be able to go and attend classes. So it's not at night where they have to get a babysitter. It really is something that helps support them where they are. So that is an important thing for us. And as they move up that credentialing ladder, they get additional money. But what we're dealing with right now is a crisis where the school districts are in the same situation, where they don't have teachers. So we will spend 6 years getting someone a bachelor's degree, who then goes to the public school system because the salary is triple, and they get all the benefits that come with that. So what we basically are doing, because childcare is so undervalued as an industry, is that we're basically a feeder program for the school districts. Oh. And that is really sad for us, because we're investing in someone for 6 years, but we can't say to them, you have to go where the money is. You have to go where there's a livable wage. And we understand that, and we have almost accepted that, which is sad, but we've accepted that at least we had them for 6 years, right? But it is an ongoing struggle with this pandemic. We are down 10 staff. And because we can't have those staff, we've been trying everything to try and get them in. We're at the point right now where we're hiring people that have no experience in early education. And that is a problem, because now we're going to be investing so much more resources in trying to get them to be up to where it's just an entry level. So that for us is, we support our teachers, but it's a double-edged sword for us.
I think it's interesting that Susan raised, I'm sorry, Denny. I appreciate her raising the piece about, increasing credentialing in order to get, to a higher wage of living. And it's something that we really struggle with in home care, because the traditional increase of credentialing, when you think of healthcare, is for someone who's a home care worker and wants to have a career, providing these kinds of services to people, that it's home care, then it's maybe a CNA, and then off to nursing school. And the reality is that is a far harder trajectory than the way we talk about it. And so what we have really tried to work on is that home care is actually also a career, and it needs to be a career that's valued. We need, just like childcare, we need people. There's a shortage in this country, and it's going to continue to grow in terms of having direct care workers to provide the services that are needed out there. And where New York State in particular has tried to put credentialing steps in place, it has not been met with adequate funding resources to improve the pay. So we're still a workforce that earns minimum wage. And you can put all the credentials in place you want to. If there's no way for those credentials to be paid for in increases, then what are we doing? We need to lift it. You know, the entire floor needs to come up for the entire population of home care workers. I mean, we're working with a group that we're saying this needs to be a middle income job. People should be able to make $40,000 as home care workers. Why are they only earning $15,000, $20,000?
And getting food stamps and receiving all the other benefits that they shouldn't because they're working full time. And it should be a livable wage. And it's a struggle for them to acknowledge. You know, we were one of the ones that were the trying to increase the wage to $15 an hour. But when the state was in Pennsylvania was determining that they were going to do a mandatory $15 an hour, they were excluding childcare workers. And that showed you how little they valued that, you know, our workers. Because can you imagine, you can go to Chick-fil-A and make more money and probably have less of a headache and probably work less than a childcare worker. And we thought if they did that, we would have everybody just flee from our industry. So we were very adamant about, you know, we want it, but you can't exclude childcare workers. And if you're going to include childcare workers, you have to include an increase in the rates that you're paying us, because we can't do both.
The sad part, I think, for us in home care is that they know that there aren't the jobs for home care workers to flee to. And so you can leave it at, in New York, you know, our minimum wage is $15, but that's nothing to live in New York.
True.
They don't need to change it.
Yeah, like in San Francisco.
They figure they will have an endless supply of, you know, women of color, immigrant women coming to do these jobs. And that's not the case. And that's not the way that we need to recover this economy.
I mean, you know, we have people that are coming in from degreed colleges where they're getting associates or BAs and are making $10 an hour. They can't even pay their school loans back. And, you know, you have, you know, professors saying, why would you want to go into early childhood education? It doesn't pay, which is true. It doesn't pay. So it really is a calling. But what we found is that trying to appeal to mothers who want to get back into the workforce and have some type of either college or some experience are the ones that we're really trying to appeal to. Because then they have free childcare. Can't beat that. That's a good benefit.
Y un poco, creo que ya nos hemos metido en la
I think we have gone into the conversation of what are the vision that we have, the future vision of future public policies that really, as we were talking about, value this essential kind of work in this economic system that's a cruel system. I was very impressed. I also came for 2 years. I was going to come just for 2 years, and I'm already at 10 years at this point. And it's very impressed what's talked about the family and the bad system. It's so badly established, the support system, to really think about having a family. So it's so wayward kind of system. How do you say it? You can't pay for it. How many children can I have? How many kids can I pay for? I have childcare, university, school, all that. So, and all that means to continue working, people have to leave their work the couple has to agree. One has to have the child and the process of childcare. But if we took charge as a society, what we need so that families have the resources they need to be able to have a family. So if you can talk a little bit about what do you envision in terms of public policies, and also remind people if they want to ask questions, you can put them in the chat or you can send them to Anna M in the Anna M Q&A. She's the one compiling those questions. So we're going to have a space to be able to make those questions. So Adria, I know you have something thinking that you're thinking of. Something that you're envisioning. And we were talking about that earlier.
So I'm actually going to take a step back to the policies that we are actually trying to pay attention to and the things that are going on currently. And, you know, I will say that there, you know, we were heartened because the stimulus bill that's, you know, stalled right now for a long time has had a recognition around payment for like hazard pay, right? And understanding the essentialness of home care and including home care. Unfortunately, that bill is stalled. And so that says a lot in terms of, you know, not getting a bill through that would really support home care and low wage workers and Americans who are out of jobs. So that, you know, is one part of it. For us, specifically in New York State, we have legislators who recognize the needs of this workforce and what they're deserving of. So we had bills that were put into legislation for, you know, during sessions in July that also looked at funding premium pay and providing funding for PPE so that organizations could safeguard their workforce. They were putting in a provision to have a 90-day stockpile of PPE and other measures that also didn't pass. So we've got, you know, challenges in New York State. Some of it, they harken back to the fact that we don't have a stimulus bill yet that provides additional support for states and cities and municipalities. But some of it is also falls to the legislature because they could think about different ways to use the money and move it around in different ways that aren't necessarily supporting the types of institutions and organizations that are actually creating more of a crisis during this time. In New York City, I will say that, you know, Mayor de Blasio has really come out and launched a commitment to a fair recovery for all in the city. And that plan really looks to build an economy that addresses the continuing disparity amongst wealth and, you know, the increasing wealth gap that's occurred in New York. And that plan will look to, instead of maintaining that status quo, really doing something different so that everybody can recover from the pandemic equally. We have a champion in terms of long-term care in New York City, which is Deputy Mayor Thompson, who even penned an op-ed about the importance and the value of home care. And so I deeply believe that we are represented and we are recognized within the city, within the state, and within these different areas. But if we don't get traction on these, kinds of policies and issues, then we will maintain the status quo and we won't have a recovery that looks at uplifting the people who were already damaged, marginalized, discounted, and not seen before the pandemic. And it you know, I think it's going to be interesting, obviously, in November. I am excited because the Biden-Harris ticket has a real plan and platform around long-term care, a long-standing one, and it'll, you know, when they get in, it will be time for us to make sure that, you know, we really actualize
también, ¿no? Es el momento de la crisis.
As Maurice was saying, it's a time of the crisis, but we have to have a plan during this time. It's very important to be able to achieve what we need to achieve. So this pandemic has only visibilized all the inequities that exist. So Susan.
So I think right now where I am at is that our organization is really focused on advocating, because we work with other childcare businesses and networks, because we bring them into our advocacy piece of it. Right now, what we need to do is stabilize, because childcare programs are closing by the hundreds. And when you think that you have a staffing shortage and that you would be able to appeal to these people who have lost their jobs, why would they come and work for you when they're making more money on unemployment? And you cannot fault them for that, because now they're actually making a little bit more money than actually coming and working at Child Space. So for us, you know, the pandemic is a double-edged sword. One is it really destabilized our business, but it's now giving us this opportunity, this window to go in the advocacy end and say, this is how important and critical we are as essential workers and essential business. And nobody works unless they have childcare or, you know, home care. So for me, it's that's one piece of it. The other piece is that I got tired of banging my head with legislators. Okay, I was just over it. So what I decided to do was that I was going to come at it from the business angle. Okay, I'm not going to talk about how how underpaid our teachers are. I'm going to tell you that if you don't invest in us, the money that we pay to the city for city taxes is gone. Right? The amount of money that our families are then putting into the economy because they're working is gone. So I really went and decided that we had to change our approach with these legislators, because they weren't looking at the social service aspect of it. They couldn't care, right? It really was about how does this impact the commerce in my district. And it really started to work. I'm actually meeting with the senator on Monday. And my appeal to him is that right now we don't have enrollment, and we have contracts with the Head Start state money. It's actually federal funded, but it funnels through the state. And in the past, if you didn't have this enrollment, they would take that money back. Well, I'm going at this business angle that they need to do something to make sure that during this pandemic and as we rebuild, that we're still getting this money in full, and that they're not going to pull any of that money back, because this will stabilize the businesses a little bit. But if you take it away, it will destroy a lot of businesses. So for me, that's my vision, and that's how we're going at the policy end, because we tried through the heartstrings and saying, you know, increasing the workforce and mothers going off of welfare, because we have women that as they move up the credential ladders, and we make it really easy for them to do that because we help support them. Then they're off of the food stamps. Then their child care is covered under Child Space. So there's ways that they get off of the state rolls, but it's been very difficult for us to change legislators. They have tunnel vision when it comes to early education. And you have to look at it, if they're not even respecting K through 12 teachers, why would they then respect and pay, you know, infant through to kindergarten? So our vision is to get that, to change that.
Totally. Quisiera empezar un poquito. Esta es
So I
la,
would
la-
like to say this is the last question and connect with the issue that this conference has is how are we gonna model the work of the future? And after that, we're gonna give a space for questions among people who are participating here. So taking it to the issue of the conference, how do you, in your cooperatives, how would you see that job of the future? What would be the ideal conditions you would have to have?
So, this is a difficult question, obviously. Because I come to it from a place of feeling like we've done an incredibly effective job within cooperative home care, right? To communicate and build a culture where the workers feel valued and know that CHCA is a place where the work that they do is recognized and it matters more than what's reflected in the paycheck, because we're restricted in terms of our reimbursement sources for being able to adequately provide the right compensation, or provide the compensation that really values the work that they do. So I think, for us, it's the work is that we've got to get that message beyond cooperative home care and, more broadly. And we have to organize workers to promote that message, demand the respect and the power and the compensation that they deserve, and support that at every turn, connect with other movements that can help us achieve that. It's hard because the way that we work as an organization and as cooperatives, is really towards shared prosperity and investing in the workers, paying attention to community. And on the CHCA side, while we're not so great in terms of involvement around climate stuff, climate issues matter to us a lot because many of our clients and workers are at risk for living in the areas that are most desecrated and impacted by, unjust climate practices. We're located in the Bronx, and out of 32 counties in New York, our health status is number 32. We have had years, decades of highest unemployment rates, lowest earnings, and it continues. So the future of work outside of cooperative needs to shift to look like work inside of cooperative. For me to really see like a vision of where we need to be.
Thank you. Susan, thank you.
So, our cooperative is a little bit different because people have a choice to be owners. And, of the 50 employees we have, we only have 11 owners. And that mainly is because we have a very participatory structure. So a lot of our employees, their voices are heard, whether they sit at the worker co-op table or not. So I think organizing is the best, to me, vision. Child Space was one of the ones that worked with 1199C and starting the Child Care Union. Our employees decided not to unionize because as worker owners, we gave them an option of doing that. But for me, there has to be someone, a louder voice than just us in advocating for this industry. And I think that whether it comes from a union or some other leadership organization that doesn't have another horse in the game, we have a lot of advocacy organizations that are going for, you know, the family. They're advocating for, you know, anybody but the employees. So for me, I think organizing is the key vision, is how do we organize to be a bigger voice? Because our families are overstressed, they can't help advocate. Our workers are underpaid and overstressed. It's very hard for them to feel like they can get their voices heard. So I think there just needs to be a bigger organization that is sitting at the legislative table than just us. And I think the work for the future for me is that our workforce is valued. You know, we still have families that come in and think that they're babysitters, right? And that's just a mentality that some families have. But for me, it's really understanding that this is a professional field, that this is a worthy job, and that it deserves a worthy wage. And that's really a vision for me. And I don't mean $15 an hour. I mean a worthy wage. I mean someone that can go and pay back their school loans and still live. That's my vision and my hope.
Muchas gracias a ambas.
Thank you. It has been a pleasure to see both of you again, Adria and Susan. It was such a pleasure to share this space and this conversation with you all. Anna, are there any questions? Yes, we do have several questions that were sent in. One of the questions is about what has the city done, or at the municipal level, has there been support now? Because there has been obviously an impact on both of your co-ops during this period.
Mm-hmm.
So has there been municipal aid?
Well, I'll say for child space. So for us, it wasn't, the support was very immediate, and as fast as it came is as fast as it dried up. So it was like the first 30 days, it was like you get in there and you get as much grant as you can. But, you know, we applied for 7 grants and we got 2. The city was the one that really funded us. But, you know, when you're a $2 million company and you're generating $120,000 in wages a month, them giving you 10,000 or 20,000 is like, that's nice, but does it really do anything? So what they were supporting was nice and helpful, but it really had no impact on the stability, you know, stabilizing our business. At least for child space, it didn't.
Yeah, I think, you know, I'd have to sort of echo those sentiments. I feel like what the city really had, one was raising the visibility around this workforce and us becoming essential, and both the state and city recognizing that. There were times where the city was able to provide some limited amounts of PPE, but, you know, they're faced with having to provide it to hospitals first, nursing homes next, and so home care still sits at the bottom. But you know, I'm not going to say that they didn't provide some resources. I think also, you know, honestly, the states and municipalities are struggling, right? And New York is getting hit particularly hard, like getting smacked on the hand and smacked on the ass for, like, you know, mouthing off, and, you know, we have all that to deal with. So where we were able to turn to was really through our sister organization, PHI. They do fundraising and development for us, and they were able to access COVID funds, emergency funds from different foundations. And then we were also able to access the federal PPP loan, which was, you know, a lifesaver. So, you know, the fact that co-ops were able to be in this time around. Yeah. And actually, I will say, though, that we almost were not able to get it because of the size of our organization and how much revenue we generate. because originally the thresholds had to do with revenue earnings. Thankfully, and somewhat ironically, it changed to net wealth of the organization. And so that immediately put us into the eligibility criteria, because I will tell you, cooperatives' revenues are in the $60 million range, but our net wealth is considerably lower than that. And no one, I don't think SBA would expect an organization that has over 2,000 workers to not have a net wealth that would be above that PPP threshold. But guess what? That's what happens when you don't value the work that an organization of 2,000 predominantly women and women of color are delivering. And so we end up qualifying for that amount for the PPP.
Can I just add one thing, that I do have to give some kudos to our state legislators, because one of the things that they did help childcare programs is that if you were receiving any type of state subsidy, children that were enrolled in your program as of March 16th when we shut down, they continued to pay them, whether they attended or not. And normally they don't do that. Normally you have a threshold of attendance, and then after that you don't get paid whether they show up or not. You just don't get paid for it. So our state did that. But what they caused is that it caused this huge gap between programs that opened up in phase 1 in June and programs that decided not to open up until September 1st. Those programs that didn't open up until September 1st are in a much better financial position because they laid off their workers and they continued to get their revenue from the state. So they opened up with a nice bunch of dollars in the bank, and programs that decided to open up because you want to support those families, that, especially those families that are frontline workers that actually have to go to work and that aren't working from home. We're the ones that sat there, and even though we got this little money from them, we obtained so much more cost, and all the systems we had to put in place to be these health and safety systems, that it was really detrimental to us to actually open up when we did. And that's where we're advocating right now at the state level, is saying you have to reimburse us something more because we did this to help support these families. We could have shut down until September 1st and opened up with money in the bank, and we chose not to. So our state did give us some, but they also gave everybody some that shouldn't have gotten it. So, and I think their mentality was, it was just easier to get the money out and not do any, calculation on who should get what. They just did it across the board. And a lot of programs that opened up lost out. Yeah, so our state did do some work.
Thank you for that. You know what, I'm just like hearing you, Susan, one question that it wasn't original in the panel, but just like the way and how we haven't yet come to value truly the work of essential workers, of women, women of color, but then also what can we do as a society really to care for those ones that care for us? And I would like to hear your thoughts here of like, what can we really truly do as as a society that is completely dependent on the care for our children and the care for our relatives?
I think we need to have more women in legislative leaderships, because until you walk in the shoes of our mothers and the workforce, which is predominantly women, you're never going to get it. You're never going to understand all of the struggles that they put through. And I do want to agree that the Biden-Harris ticket, what I'm so excited about is that they do have a platform for early education and a universal childcare, which will then help elevate our industry a little bit more, because we would be then having some stability in income. So for me, it's really, I think we have to go back through the legislative. We really have to start electing women and progressives that really understand how important the social service industries are, that we've been thrown to the side so long and we're just taking advantage of it. It's really impact our workforce. So for me, it's really the legislative end.
Yeah, I couldn't echo that more. I mean, and especially in terms of the piece that I think you guys put it in the chat, but it was also referenced in the very beginning around the proposal that came out of the Hawaii State Commission. I mean, I think we should all take that as a roadmap. And to some extent, I think that, you know, different states and different cities are trying to look at these aspects, but like we should take it and run with it and figure out how we promote these types of, you know, interventions and changes for the future.
And can I just say one thing when I talk about the legislative end of it? I'll give you an example. In the city of Philadelphia, we have the soda tax like New York, and it funds our universal pre-K, which is limited. It is still, I think we're in year 6, it is still continuing to go and be on the legislative docket of, the legal docket of trying to overturn it. And at some point, do they win? Somewhat, we're getting beat down, right? But for me, there has to be some end to it. Like if there are more people that in the legal end of it that really understands our dilemma, but we have a win, but we have to keep fighting for that win. Even though it's a win, we got this, but it's still always in jeopardy. And that to me is that why we have to change it on the legislative level, and that we have to embed it in legislation so that it is, a value. And another example is right now we have Head Start. Head Start is in the legislation. If you don't think it was in the legislation, they would have cut that back years and years ago. But because it's embedded in that legislation, they have not been able to touch it. And that annoys some of the legislators. So that's my thought.
And there is never enough, right? Because I'm a mother of a 5-year-old. And I also know, when we're trying to support a school and we're trying to bring teachers that come with the skills, the pre-K, the Philly pre-K program is still limits on how much they can pay to the workers, right? Because it's never enough what they give us, right? So thank you for bringing that to our attention. One of the other questions that I have here is, in reference to the National Domestic Workers Alliance and the importance, and I think this question really comes to like, what are the overlaps that we can pick from the worker cooperative movement with other national movements that are already organizing within the industries that are considered a part of the domestic work?
I think, Susan keeps alluding to it, and that question also gets to where do we build these alliances in order to, further the opportunities for us to gain wins for, domestic workers, home care workers, childcare workers. For CHCA, we are in New York State. Our home care workers, everybody has to be, through our Department of Health, we're required to ensure that everybody has an I-9 and is eligible for work. And the way that we connect to a broader kind of advocacy group is through 1199 as the union in New York State for our home care workers. And I see, similarities for NDWA in terms of being strong proponents and advocates. And these are movements that, or organizers that need to work together so that we can advance this agenda and achieve the outcomes that we need in order for the workforce to be paid living wages, real living wages. In order to be valued for the jobs that they provide. So I think the key is going to be forging those allegiances. And, within those allegiances, each movement understands how they can help participate in elevating the issues that are in front of us.
I agree. And I think that, Child Space has already started those alliances, and we do work with 1199C in helping get some of our workers into some of their programs. But for us, you know, we have decided that we are really focusing on the legislative piece of it, the alliances, because that's really where the money is for us. And that until that changes and some investment is given on a, you know, on a more federal level, we're going to continue to stay at the low reimbursement rates. There has to be some additional investment, and our state can't just do it on its own. It really has to come from block grants, which is very vague. You know, block grants used to be specific, and now they're at that point where they're very vague, and they could be putting more money investing in social services, but they're choosing not to. So for us, we're really focusing our alliances on the legislators.
And I think for us, we're, you know, we're focused on legislators, but I think we're spending a lot of time also connecting to allies within home care. So, you know, CHCA works with other licensed home care agencies to have, you know, a lobbyist that fights for issues. We are connected to an organization called the Caring Majority, which is very much interested in organizing and promoting the fact that, you know, home care services should be a basic right, and home care worker jobs have to be valued and dignified. And the Caring Majority just recently launched a 501c4 so that they are like ready to go the political route and put money behind, you know, campaigns and up the game, basically.
And I think that the alliance that Child Space is also built right now is that we have, you know, we've increased our advocacy groups. So we have Northwest Directors Group, which is a group of directors in the city of Philadelphia that come and we meet. And during those monthly meetings, a lot of we'll have legislators come and present there, but we'll also talk about initiatives that they can bring back to their programs for their families. But what we've also started to institute is we have some pretty, at one of our programs, we have some pretty high-powered professionals, and they have decided to sit on our parent advocacy committee. And that was really, this is the first time in 32 years we decided to do that with the parents. And we were really surprised at how they're really taking this responsibility and running with it, because we realized that it can't just be us sitting at the table. It has to be a broader coalition. And, you know, a lot of times, like I said, we have these other industries that are childcare, that represent the childcare field, but they all have their own agendas, right? They all have all their own issues that they're trying to get passed, whether it's, you know, different regulations or, you know, less credentials for teachers so that you can get people back into the workforce. It's very strict for us to be able to have teachers that come in. They have to have specific credentials to work with children, and they have to pass specific legal hurdles. So if someone has one little federal, you know, they got in a fight when they were 18, that would stop someone from being able to be in our field. So for us, it just has to be a bigger alliance. And all of it, I think, then circles back to the legislators, right? You can do all this stuff, but unless we get those legislators to invest in this industry, then it's going to be, you know, a lose-lose situation. And we need teachers. We need teachers.
Thank you. We have 7 minutes left. And, you know, I think that one of the things that I keep hearing, you know, is that we cannot win in isolation. And I keep hearing you, you know, the alliances that you've been building already. And I hear also the different arms of this nonprofit, you know, the different organizations that are necessary to really act in different areas of advocacy, right? Like I hear the nonprofit for the side of the bringing the funding. I hear like a C4 for the piece of advocacy. Can you give us like examples of these alliances that you have built along with the cooperative? Just because I know that they are, you know, they're working cooperatives, they're hearing this and they might be struggling in the different localities. So yeah, if you can share.
Susan, you want to go first? You want me to go?
If you can go.
Sure. So for cooperatives specifically, I think we've been fortunate to forge a lot of really valuable alliances. I talked on the nonprofit side. I talked about the fact that PHI, which is a 501c3 nonprofit that came out of cooperative home care about 25 years ago, 20 maybe even longer. And they are our close partner in terms of both advocating for more investment in the direct care workforce, the recognition that you must provide quality jobs in order to have quality care, elevating the visibility of what this workforce can do, how we're facing critical shortages in this country around home care and having people come into home care, but the need is increasing exponentially. We've also been fortunate to have strong alliances with social and co-op friendly lenders. So, you know, when we've had situations where we were struggling in terms of needing a loan, we were able to go to folks in the co-op and social capital friendly kind of spaces and access loans. We obviously have an allegiance with 1199 because the workers are organized. And when we went down that road initially, it was challenging because 1199 saw themselves as representative of the workers, and so did CHCA. So, you know, working together and both being very much engaged in labor and the worker has been a beneficial relationship in being organized. I think we've, as I said, you know, being connected to organizations like the Caring Majority have really helped in terms of advocacy and elevating, you know, the platform and bringing recognition to the challenges that we are facing in home care. So that's just some of them.
Thanks,
I would,
Adria.
no,
I'm
I have to
gonna
also say, wait,
be-
I gotta say U.S. Federation. How could I leave out the Federation and Dowie,
Yeah.
who keep us grounded and honest and real when it comes to the worker co-op world? Because, you know, we have this identity as a home care company, but we're also a cooperative. And so that is right up there.
Thank you, Adria. So I'm going to be like Amy Goodman. We have 2 minutes before we close. So Susan, if you can give us your answer, and we're closing in 2 minutes, in 3 minutes.
Yeah. So I think Child Space has been like on an island for 32 years because we're one of the only child care centers that is a cooperative. So a lot of the work that we've done and alliances has been with other organizations like ICA out of Boston. We've done some work with them. They're in the process right now of trying to convert some programs. So we're doing some work with them in understanding our structure. And that has been an important alliance for us because they have that opportunity of doing alternative lending, which just like home health care, we've had a problem being able to get funding. And so, but with that, they've also been giving us some really excellent resources to other cooperatives that can help support us. And a lot of times as a childcare business, we're so embedded in our everyday operations that it's really hard for us to look out. So a lot of what we're dealing with is internal. You know, so we do work with the Federation and we work with 1199C, but we're looking forward to expanding to the greater worker cooperative community or any cooperative community at this point, because we're at a situation now where we think we have to be able to network to get our agendas passed and to get support for our industry.
Thank you so much, Susan. Thank you so much, Adria and Daniela, to lead us in this conversation. We have to wrap it up. We're gonna go to the closing session. And we're going to be sharing resources also after this session with attendees. So, you know, if you missed this, also we're recording this session. And thank you so much again for the incredible work that you do to care for our children and for our relatives. Thank you so much, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Good to see you, Danny.
Good to see you.
Bye.
Should we stay here, or is this the same channel? No.
No, so we're gonna end this and then you just go to the link for the closing.
Okay. See you then.
Bye, guys.
Bye.